Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the world according to Sam Marshall. It's been 2 weeks since I was last with you, and here I am today with my friend Shel Horowitz. Shel and I met about 6 months ago on a networking event that we both go to. By now, if you follow my podcast, you will have seen the podcast with Richard Scott, and we've talked about networking for good. You will have heard me talk about you, Andy Rolfe. And I can tell you now with a big smile on my face, she's coming in 2 weeks' time. So I've met so many interesting people, and Shel is one of them. So Shel's LinkedIn profile says, I help businesses identify, create, and market profitable environmental and social good products or services that address hunger, poverty, racism, climate change, and all of the things that are involved in that through win-win partnerships. Shel, you are a very interesting man to me.
Well, thank you.
I don't profess to know a lot, and I probably hold my hands up and say I'm a bit of a scaredy cat. So actually out there activism is something that I worry about, but I know you've got a book coming out on that as well. And it was really important for me to get you online today because you've got a message that is really important. So I'm going to shut up and say, Shel, tell us about yourself, what you do and why you do it.
Sure. So I help any business or organization find the sweet spot where profitability meets all of those good things you talked about, solving hunger and poverty and war and isms and even climate change. We have a lot of the solutions already. We don't know how to deploy them and we don't have the will to deploy them, but we know how. So it's just a matter of figuring that out. In the case of something as intractable and long-lasting as war, which has been part of human history before human history was written down, we have to remember that it's almost always a resource issue. Somebody wants some stuff that is underneath the ground or in the air of somebody else. So whether it's food or iron ore or aluminum or in today's world,
Oil.
yeah, any of that stuff, that's why wars are fought. So if we figure out ways to address the resource questions, we don't need to have wars about it. So if, for example, at the time that one of the people I profile in a couple of my books is a chap named Amory Lovins, lives in the Colorado Rocky Mountains right outside of Aspen. His house, which I have visited, was built in 1984. When most of us knew nothing about building a net zero home. It cost so little to do designed in serious greening of the house, such as not bothering with a furnace, saving thousands of dollars there because the house was so energy efficient that it stays warm in the winter. And let me tell you, Colorado Rockies have some real winter. That's a ski capital. And stays cool in the summer. And when I heard him speak in 2001, he said that his monthly household electric bill was $5. So that's about £7 for your lot. Now, okay, there's been some inflation there. So let's stick a zero on the end of that. That's still, $50 is not bad for a 4,000 square foot luxury home. And it's warm enough in there that without a furnace, he's growing bananas inside. And the improvements paid for themselves in under a year. I think it was 9 months. So for now more than 40 years, that house has been basically net zero and has paid back its investment thousands of times over in reduced energy bills. So if we started doing that in 1984 as a nation, we have built a lot of housing stock since then. Most of it slapped up with the old model, stick-built houses with limited insulation and no attention to solar orientation, and on it goes. And that's why we went to war in Iraq, and that's probably why we're at war in Iran right now. So we solve that problem. We get people to live in green homes, which, by the way, are more comfortable and better lit and easier to breathe in for the most part than the traditional home. why wouldn't we have done this 40 years ago? What are we waiting for? So in terms of how that works on a one-to-one consultant to client level, as an example, I have a client who came to me with something called the Solar Foldy. It is a solar lamp the size of a cell phone, fits in a pocket. And so for her, I brainstormed with her a whole lot of different uses for it, ranging from children's nightlights to art projects, shining it through a colander, to disaster relief in places where there's no power, and on it goes. And she is still seeking funding, so she hasn't gone to market yet, but she will not run out of ideas as to applications for her product because of that marketing plan that I wrote. So it's really looking very individualistically at what is the business's strengths, what does the business owner actually like to do, and where are the holes in the market that could be filled with that expertise turning toward environmental and social good. Some examples that were not necessarily clients of mine. There's a company called D-Light, since we're talking about solar lighting. They go all over the world, Africa, Asia, Latin America, selling small solar lamps that replace kerosene. Now, Sam, let me tell you a little bit about kerosene lamps. They're toxic. They're flammable. They cause a lot of deaths and injuries because of fires. You're breathing those nasty fumes. The light quality is poor. And of course, you're paying for the kerosene every single month. Now, you swap that out. Let's say you're spending $20 a month on kerosene, and let's say you're making $25 a week as a farmer, and you live in someplace like Rwanda or Pakistan or whatever. So they will sell you that lamp for the same, sorry, I put my zero in the wrong place, for the same $2 a month that you were paying for the kerosene. And after 10 months, it's yours, not paying that $2 a month anymore. And if you're making $20 a month, you've just had a 10% pay increase. And not only that, but you have a good light that you can use whenever you want it. That allows you to perhaps do a cottage craft industry after that day in the fields. That allows your children to see better and therefore do their homework better and faster, get better grades, and 10 years down the road, get better jobs. And you've built a ladder out of poverty on a $20 lamp that's sold in time payments that were no more than you were already paying for the kerosene. And creating a job in the field for the person who sold it to you and who's going to service it if there's a problem. How cool is that?
Absolutely. I love that idea.
Yeah.
And there are so many analogies, aren't there? The obvious one is give a man a fish he can eat for a day, teach a man how to fish, he's set for life. But that whole, it's $2, which doesn't sound like anything at all to us, but for them is a significant proportion of their income. And so they make a small investment and then they've got it. And that is, I've got goosebumps on that one.
Yeah, now that's more on the environmental side, even though it has obvious social ramifications in terms of hunger and poverty particularly. But let's look at something that's specifically on the social good side. Okay, do you know a lot of companies that hire ex-prisoners, ex-mental patients?
Not a lot. I mean, I know there are some, but that's actually because back in my day, as a trainer, we used to work with the prison service and the youth justice service. So maybe I had exposure that other people wouldn't, but I can imagine it is very, very difficult for an ex-prisoner.
It is. And you are the first person, I think, who's ever interviewed me who said that, yes, you were familiar with the idea. So it's very rare. But there is a company called Grayston Bakery. Now, I think that Ben & Jerry's has crossed the pond, and that's an ice cream that you can get at least in London or maybe even in Glasgow. Yeah. Well, yes. They get their brownies from a company called Grayston Bakery, which is located in Yonkers, New York, which is a depressed city, literally on the edge of New York City. It's you cross the street and you're in the Bronx, which is one of New York's 5 boroughs. And Grayston Bakery years ago changed from a traditional hiring policy to, we have a list. When your name comes up on the list, you have a job offer.
Oh, wow.
Now, that job offer obviously comes with some training, because these are people who do not know how to handle themselves in the workplace, and who have not held positions of responsibility, and who have nothing on their resume that you want to brag about. By the time they've worked at Greyston a little while, they understand how the workforce works. Many of them, most of the Greyston management started as line workers.
Wow.
They get good jobs. And not only that, the company has now developed a very profitable sideline teaching other businesses how to hire quote unquote unemployables. So this is amazing. And their HR costs actually go way down, because yes, they do have to supply a fair amount of training and hand-holding, but they've gotten rid of the process of interviewing. They've gotten rid of all of the background check stuff. They've gotten rid of just so many of the costs involved, and they've gotten rid of the revolving door, because when you give people a chance like that, you may have that employee for a lot of years. And by the time they leave the company 15 or 20 years later, they are supervising crews and in management. And it's amazing. And so that's what they're marketing this service of teaching other companies how to do it, is on how you can really slash your HR costs and provide good in your community at the same time. And I just love that. All about the win-win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And for me, I'm absolutely sure that people that have had a custodial sentence probably do fall into one of two major categories, and that is that they made a mistake and they didn't really see where it was going, and they've ended up in prison. And then you've got serial offenders. But my guess is a serial offender, if their name came up on the list, possibly wouldn't attend anyway, because that's not what they see in their future. So you're actually then looking at those people that maybe, I'm going to call it, have had a bad break in life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you're giving them
real rehabilitation as opposed to custodial incarceration. Yeah, so it's a very powerful paradigm that reinvents the whole way we look at things. Just like Amory Lovins reinvented the whole way we look at what it is to build a house. And you can look at any sector. You can look at agriculture, and what's going on in the permaculture world is so amazing. And what's going on in finding uses for natural products. I was just reading an old book by Frances Moore Lappé, author of Diet for a Small Planet and many other books. The book is called Hope's Edge, and it came out in, I think, 2007. And it's brilliant. And she talks about how people in India are using the neem tree, and how some big corporation tried to patent it, and they went and pulled out historical evidence that the uses of the neem tree predated this company, let alone the patent application, and they won their case. And so they're full of success stories like this. And I do try to pump myself full of good news media. I look at Yes Magazine. I look at reasonstobecheerful.com. I look at Jessica Craven. Every Sunday has one issue of her newsletter devoted to good news for the week. And I'm reading all of these sources, and I don't watch TV news. I don't need to see pictures of burning buildings and people rioting and people shooting each other. And I certainly don't need it right before bedtime.
No, absolutely.
I think what we fill our brains with has a lot to do with how we approach the world. And I approach the world as an abundant place full of love and full of whatever we need. And I look at nature. Nature doesn't run on money at all. But everything in nature has a place in the ecosystem, and it's all supporting each other. It's a very, very coexistent universe. And yes, some animals are killed by other animals. Yes, lots of plants are killed by four-legged and two-legged animals. But the whole system maintains its balance.
We have a program here in the UK, and I can't imagine that it's gone across the pond. It's called Spring Watch, and then in the autumn it's called Autumn Watch, and then in the winter it's called Winter Watch. And it's two presenters who are really invested in wildlife and have got a long history, who go to certain properties around the UK, national, do I want to say National Trust? Yes, I think I probably do. And they do a week-long or a fortnight-long program. and it's on Spring Watch is on at the moment. They're actually on for 3 weeks, Monday to Thursday, 8 till 9. And they show life, warts and all. And I was talking to a friend last night who happened to flick onto it, and she went, "What am I watching?" Because the chicks are in the nest and the parents are feeding the chicks. And they actually fed 2 of their chicks with the deceased bird chick. Well, yes, it's meat and it's food, and it was blessedly hot over here for 2 days. Today, of course, rain, cloud, drop the temperature by 10 degrees today. But all of these birds were struggling because of lack of water. And we had a robin's nest, and I think it had probably 6 or 8 chicks in it, and we were following them, and a pine marten got them. And my friend said, "What am I watching?" And I said, "You're watching nature." Because because we don't see it, because it's not on TV cameras, doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Yeah, nature is a violent environment. Which doesn't mean that we humans have to be violent. We have evolved enough to understand a lot more about communication than most species, and about how to solve conflicts without going to battle. And of course, when we do go to battle, we bring all these terrible weapons that animals do not have. They have their own claws and teeth, and that's about it. And we have all of these complicated and destructive things that we can use to kill our own. But there's absolutely no reason we need to do that. Again, it comes back to resource issues and solving them in peaceful ways. And I do talk about that quite a bit this is my most recent book, number 10, Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World. It's already 10 years old, and I'm very aware of what the next book is going to be. But that is actually, I'm giving away the PDF. And if the book is too big at well over 300 pages, you can also get a sampler of it on my website, goingbeyondsustainability.com.
Okay, well, if we pause there for a second, that will give me a chance to put your contact details in at this point for people to go to. And off you go again.
All righty. Yeah, so 4 of my books are about this intersection of business profitability with making the world better. Lots of examples, lots of success stories, lots of background information about how we got to the place where we are and what we can do about it. I really think that I wrote a very, very good book here. And I am biased, yes, but I would say that of the 10 books I have done, that is by far the best one. And if I were to write it again today, it would be even better, because I know so much more than I did then. But my next book is actually going to be on the activist side of things. And there's an interesting story, because it was activism that got me into this work in the first place. I'm going to walk you over to my window. I live on a working dairy farm in Hadley, Massachusetts, United States. And if you look...
And it's 8 o'clock in the morning with you at the moment. I do appreciate this. Oh, Shel, that's lovely.
And that mountain you see there is a state park called Skinner State Park. It is also better known by the name Mount Holyoke. And there is a college, very famous women's college, 3 miles down the road, that is named for that mountain. And from that mountain, we have a 4-state view from the top, which is only 942 feet. So that's about 300 meters. It's a tiny little mountain, but it just happens to be well positioned to see the entire valley and to see down into Connecticut and up into Vermont and New Hampshire, and of course down at our feet in Massachusetts. And it's the place where everybody takes their out-of-town visitors to the top of that mountain. The mountain next to that mountain was where a real estate developer said, "I'm going to put 40 big trophy homes, 40 McMansions, going from the road to the ridgeline." And I was the one who said, "I don't think so." So I started a movement called Save the Mountain. And my wife facilitated the meeting, and we had it at our house, and we were expecting, 30 people show up. 5 of them will get deeply involved. We'll make the developer's life miserable for about 5 years, and then he'll go away. Well, 70 people came to the meeting. We barely fit them in. I do not live in a McMansion. We had people sitting on the wood stove. We had people sitting on the bay window. Going to the bathroom was a 6 or 7 minute operation of putting one foot carefully in the little space between people and then the other. And we had another 30 people call and say, that's not a good night for me, but I want to get involved. We started a movement that ultimately involved couple of thousand people, at least on the level of signing a petition or putting up a lawn sign or bumper sticker. And oh my gosh, we won in 13 months flat. The project was announced in November 1999, and in December 2000, that land became part of the park next door, part of the park that mountain that I just showed you is part of. And this was while all of the experts, when we started, were saying, oh, this is terrible, but there's nothing we can do. It was actually not the developer's plan, but the responses from noted environmentalists in the Valley that were in the same article that motivated me to start that movement. What do you mean there's nothing? There's always something we can do. I might write a book by that title someday.
I think that's a very good idea for a book title, and it is very, very interesting because I recorded a podcast yesterday I was the guest for someone else, my friend Amanda. And when Amanda chats about her life, she always says, and I crushed this target, or I broke this ceiling, or I did this because no one told me I couldn't. Or no one told her she shouldn't, no one told her she couldn't. So she looked at the problem and she went off and she did something about it, just like you. And part of the recording is, by now people know my background. So no background in estate agency, came in May last year, and I've gone through all of the stages of, I've got myself practically qualified, I've got sales going through, I've got rentals going through, because nobody told me that in a traditional real estate or estate agency here, I would have individual jobs. If I was in a high street, I would be either the person that answered the phone or the valuer. I do it all, and I just make it my purpose to be available to people. No one told me that I shouldn't, and so I did, and it's worked. And I think that's a great book, Shel. I think you need to write it.
The funny thing is, Sam, wasn't not being told that I couldn't, it was being told that I couldn't. And that was what I call the red flag waved in front of the bull. How dare you tell me I can't do it? I'm going to prove you wrong. And I exceeded my own expectations, which were pretty high bar, wildly. 1 year instead of 5. And
yeah. Amazing.
And we had it was the closest thing to a consensus movement I've ever been involved with. I'm not talking about an organization running by consensus decision making. I'm talking about, we had the consensus of the community that was a really stupid project and shouldn't be built. And we ended up passing 3 pieces of protective legislation in town and getting tons of media coverage. And the way we won is that we attracted, and I did not know this while this was going on, the campaign started in November. That in March, a philanthropist contacted some of our people and basically said, I would like to buy that mountain out from under the developer who didn't actually own the property yet. He had a purchase and sale agreement. So from March to December was figuring out how to do that. And then she gave the state the money to take it by eminent domain in a friendly taking. The property owner was happy because she got twice as much money as the developer was going to pay her, which was still probably below fair market value for that parcel. We all in the neighborhood were thrilled because it meant we weren't looking at those damn houses every time we drove up to town. The whole community was thrilled because when they're on the top of the mountain, they're not looking down at those awful houses. And it was really that experience, Sam, that got me to think, okay, this campaign that I've been doing for the last year used everything I know about marketing in an activist campaign. What lessons does the activist world have for business? And I started thinking about that. And about a year later, it all kind of came together with the idea that business, responsible, ethical, human-centered, earth-centered businesses could be a success model. So then I did some research and determined that, yes, that's correct. Actually, businesses that do these good things are more likely to succeed and more profitable when they do succeed. So that was how I made that shift in my own career. I'd been kind of an ordinary marketing guy, writing press releases and book covers and flyers for small businesses and occasionally nonprofits or colleges. And then all of a sudden I had a specialty. I had a niche. After doing that for 20 years, I was suddenly the guy who can do this for environmental and social good businesses. And it's never been my full living. But what I found is that what people were willing to pay me for in enough numbers to keep me viable was to produce books with social and environmental content, to become a book shepherd of books that make the world better. So that's...
Am I right in thinking that you're not on Amazon because you don't agree with Amazon's processes, or have I made that up?
I have one book, my book on having fun cheaply, that is still available on Amazon. It's an $8.50 ebook. So it's, and every year I think I pay them something like $16 to maintain the listing, which I should probably stop doing because nobody's buying that book anymore and I'm giving it away anyway. So, but I don't shop at Amazon.
That's where I got it from.
I don't shop at the businesses that Amazon owns. I stopped shopping. We have a very large health food chain that I used to shop at regularly called Whole Foods. I don't go there.
I know Whole Foods, yeah.
So I stopped going a few months after Bezos bought that. And then I let my subscription to the Washington Post lapse when he started. I didn't do it when he bought it, but when he started interfering with the editorial content, I stopped. I still get their free newsletter every morning.
I was exposed to Whole Foods in 2016. I don't know if that was pre or post Bezos, but we actually went out to Las Vegas because I was going to conference out there for 3 days. So we had a bit of a holiday. In a whole 2 weeks in Las Vegas, I spent £5 on gambling. $5 on gambling, that was it. And that was on the last day. And there is a picture of me stood there with my $5 in my hand going.
My first trip to Vegas, I spent $1 gambling at a slot machine in the airport on my way home. And my second trip, I didn't gamble at all.
I was much more invested in getting out to the Grand Canyon and having that peace and listening to the people that lived there and how they made their living. But I was introduced to Whole Foods, and it was, for me, it was an eye-opener. I was very, very new to learning about bone broth and sort of foods to heal you. And walking into this, and I assume they're all laid out exactly the same, walking into these huge salad bars where you could get everything that I recognized and didn't recognize, and being able to buy bone broth and just walking around, I was absolutely in awe of this. So in the UK, people, if you think about Holland and Barrett and then multiply it by about 5 or 10 times, that's the size of a Whole Foods store.
Very
and
normal.
then
yeah. And you can probably get a lot of the same products at places like Marks and Spencer, or maybe even Tesco.
Maybe now Tesco's have upped their game, but I was still blown away by Whole Foods. Anyway.
It's quite an experience. It's like it's the first chain that really took natural foods marketing to the not just the supermarket level, but the superstore supermarket level. Some of them are quite huge, and even the small ones are pretty darn big.
I did go from one extreme to the other, though, Shel. I did go from Whole Foods to the Cheesecake Factory, and that was absolutely 100% inspired by the Big Bang Theory. And I really hope that Penny might be my server. I did enjoy the Cheesecake Factory, probably a little bit too much, really.
Yeah, well, it's funny because a lot of these the Cheesecake Factory, if you look at their menu, you're like, wow, no matter who you are, you can find stuff you can eat here. But then when you actually eat it, for me, the one time I did it, it was a very disappointing experience. And I would much rather go to, okay, yeah, this restaurant only serves Thai or only serves Afghani, but it's run by Thais and Afghanis, and I'm going to get real food there. Um,
That's
and,
absolutely it. And there's a story going back to when I first moved down to Devon in the early 2000s, and we didn't go out and eat a lot when we lived in Buckinghamshire. So we moved down to Devon, and on the front there was this lovely Italian. It was called Prezzo's, and I was blown away and thought, my goodness, this entrepreneur, this person has set up Prezzo's. So imagine how absolutely gutted I was to find that Prezzo's is actually a chain.
oh no.
And back in those days, it was even worse than that. Back in those days, I can't say for now because I don't go there anymore, but everything was sent in pre-packed vacuum pouches and put in water baths. So that was how your spaghetti carbonara was made, and that was how your, whatever was made. And I was so disappointed by this. And I seek out small individual places that do fresh food. I'm carb free now, through choice, because it really helps my blood sugars.
Mhm.
Trying to be carb free is an uphill battle every day because they hide sugar and they hide flour and they hide glucose and modified starch everywhere.
Yeah.
But there are some places I can go. But here in Scotland, as I don't know if you know their reputation, but the reputation of the Scots is chips with everything and absolutely no vegetables.
Mhm.
I have a friend, he's wonderful. He only eats meat and potatoes. So when I've had him round for a Christmas dinner, I do a heap of roast potatoes for him and a heap of vegetables for us. So he eats the potatoes and the Yorkshire pudding, and we have the vegetables. But it is becoming increasingly difficult to do a quick weekly shop because you're looking at labels. I like smoked salmon. They've snuck sugar into smoked salmon. My friend has a milk allergy. They've snuck milk proteins into sliced ham.
Oh goodness.
I'm like,
Yeah. Well, I'm not carb free, but I am a vegetarian for 53 years almost. And I started when I was 16. And my daughter is vegetarian and gluten-free and low FODMAP, which means low carb, among other things. So I am, and for my younger one was a vegan for 5 years, although has gone back to being just vegetarian, and it's not much easier, especially when the two of them are home together to cook. Well, basically, when the younger one was still a vegan, we basically said to the two of them, "Here's the kitchen. We'll come and set up when you're ready, and we'll clean up." Because they both like to cook, and rather than arguing who's going to cook what, they can do it. But we all four like to cook, actually, and I certainly, when I have guests who are vegan or no carb or whatever, I can accommodate them, no problem. But I totally understand about reading labels because they sneak meat into all sorts of things. They, and or chemicals. I try to eat as chem free as possible, and we are members of a community-supported agricultural farm. We also have our own garden, and that we have very good local farmers markets here where most of the growers, they may not be organic certified, but they're doing organic practices.
Yeah.
That's good enough for us.
Yeah, absolutely. My cousin went vegan for medical practices. Gosh, that must be 3, maybe even 4 years ago now. So she's coming to stay for 6 weeks, and it's going to be quite a challenge because what she can eat is quite carb heavy against what we eat. But we've sat down and said what we'll do is we'll plan meals together. There'll be some things we'll do separately, but like she's coming up with, well, did you know you can have watermelon and kiwi fruit as a breakfast?
But not if you're not eating.
Sorry?
Not if you're not eating any fructose, because that's
Exactly. But I will take fruit because I eat the skin on the kiwis to give me my extra fiber. But we're going to sit down and go, right, okay, what is it that we can both have? And what is it that you need? And what is it that I need? And she does rely, sadly, on ready meals. Now, our supermarkets here are stacked full of vegan ready meals. That's lovely. But for me, it's like, well, they're all carb heavy, they're all chemical heavy. But she's done it for medical reasons, and I'm absolutely not going to tell her she's wrong because she's happier now than she has been in 3 or 4 years.
Vegan cooking is actually very simple if you're not worried about carbs. It wouldn't work for you, but I mean, red lentils cook in 15 minutes. Pasta cooks very quickly. Tofu is basically instant. Tempeh, the same. And all of these foods are easy to get now, and some much tastier if you're the one flavoring it than if you're relying on somebody to flavor it 3 months earlier in some factory. But anyway, enough about food and people's eating habits. let's go back to talking about. So I mentioned that I was working on a new book, and that's from the activism side. I am 69. I'll be 70 in December, and I have been an activist since, oh my gosh, 1969. I was 12. So I have this long history, and I've begun speaking about activism at any age, but that's too big for a book. So the book is going to be Activism for 60 plus.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do with it, and if anybody watching knows somebody I should talk to about this, I'm looking for an organization to be the charity recipient, to get some small amount of money per sale for each book sold, and who will bring a base of people who are interested in the book, so that the publisher says, oh, it's not just you, mid-list author Shel Horowitz. It's mid-list author Shel Horowitz with 100,000 people who want this book to succeed, and maybe 10,000 of those will buy it. So it becomes a very different conversation when I start looking for publishers. And I've had a huge amount of fun writing the outline and the 3 writing samples, which all convey very different aspects of the book. One is a profile of a woman who was still an activist on her 100th birthday. One of 2 I've met in that category. Went to both of their 100th birthday parties. And the one that I wrote about, people said, what do you want for your birthday? And she says, I want 100 people with 100 signs for 100 causes marching through the streets of Northampton. That would be Northampton, Massachusetts, not Northampton, UK. She's like 4'8". She's tiny, she's got glasses as thick as the wall of my house. And she got 300, and she was not willing to wait long enough for the police escort to show up. So she started the march and just said to the person pushing her wheelchair, let's get going, people will follow. And then our state senator and our then mayor jumped into the streets in their civvies to stop the traffic for the march. It was one of the best things I've ever seen. And she was still alive for another 6 months or so. And I had just been to observe at an immigration prison for teens. This is during the first Trump term. And we were doing talkbacks when we got back. And the last time I saw her, she came to one of those talkbacks and sat in the audience waiting to learn and listen. And I had a quick conversation with her before we went up on stage. 150 at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, and her friend argued for her 100th birthday, she organized a charity fundraiser for the charity that she ran, still was running. And the room was full of elected officials who all knew her from their activist days. And yeah, there's no upper limit. There's no lower limit. I know of 2 people, one of whom is my younger kid, who were involved in some sort of activist work at age 6.
Gosh.
I took one activist action at about age 3, but then I didn't do anything else until 12. But my parents were having a party, and all of their friends had their cigarette boxes lying around on the table, and I was crawling around under the coffee table, breaking the cigarettes because I knew I didn't want that shit in my breathing space.
Yeah.
And I was very tiny. And that's one of my two very earliest memories.
Wow. And really forward thinking about when you thinking about your age, so when you were born. So I mean, that was the peak of smoking when everyone thought it
Oh,
was
yeah.
fine.
Everybody smoked. Yeah. My parents were smokers for a while, although they both gave it up. My mother gave it up pretty early, but my dad, I remember my sister and I, after my parents divorced, he had us on Sundays and he would light up his pipe and my sister and I would both start coughing whether we needed to or not to try to shame him into stopping. And he eventually gave it up when his doctor said, well, if you'd like to keep living, I suggest you stop smoking. And he lived to be 93. So he was not a smoker for the last roughly 30 years of that.
Mm-hmm. I struggle with vapes. I'm not a smoker. I was a smoker. I was a heavy smoker. I gave up back in 1993 because I had a wedding to pay for, essentially. But I struggle with people who vape, even when they're vaping outside, because here we've got all these laws, you can't vape inside, you can't vape outside of a hospital and things like that. But walking down the street, they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I've walked past it. Oh,
yeah. And pot is just as bad. I mean, I walk by, I do not like the smell of vaping pot. And it's legal in my state. So it's very, very common and it's disgusting. And it does not make my lungs feel good to walk by it.
I do wonder what the long-term research will be of vapes and what they will find. I mean, my dad died of lung cancer. He'd smoked from probably age 14 through to age 65 when they finally told him he had emphysema, which they now call COPD, and that if he wanted to live longer, he needed to stop smoking. So he did. And mum's carried on smoking for probably another 10 years. So that wouldn't have helped him because there'd have been secondary smoking. And then she gave up as well because she said, well, I've got a wedding to pay for as well. Yeah, right. And that was the end. It took me 10 years to get over the urge to smoke.
Wow. Yeah, it's very addictive.
And that was a lot of willpower to not do it.
But that does lead me back to citizen action, because here in the US, we have the Clean Air Act, we have the Clean Water Act. The current government is trying to destroy them, but they've been around since the 1970s. Richard Nixon, who was one of the most conservative presidents we've ever had, signed those bills into law, not because he was a great guy on the environment, but because there were millions of people in the streets demanding it.
Yeah.
The power of citizen action should never be underestimated. That's also why we finally got out of the Vietnam War after more than a decade. It's because the people wouldn't stand for it anymore. And right now, there's a huge wave of activism about the overreaches of this particular federal government that we have. And people do not want us sliding into fascism. They do not want enrichment of the president's family and cronies at the expense of our health care and our social services. And even the Republicans are jumping ship. I never thought I'd see the day where Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to be on my side of anything.
Yeah. I think media spin is very interesting, and we noticed this. We moved up to Scotland in 2017, and at the time, Nicola Sturgeon was in power in Scotland. And from what we could see, looking at the English news, she had nothing else up her sleeve, but she wanted Scottish independence. When we moved to Scotland and we started seeing a different media output, we started to see, no, who would it have been? I want to say Boris Johnson, but I'm sure he came after, as a complete clown, and she as being the voice of sanity.
It probably was Boris Johnson, because John Major was sane. His politics were awful, but he was sane.
Boris is definitely not. And the same actually, as Obama's went out and Trump came in. So we came to Vegas in December 2016. So I think we were in sort of that 100-day period.
The
And we've
transition.
been seeing stuff on the UK news about Trump appointing and sacking, appointing and sacking. Spent 2 weeks in Vegas watching your news. He sacked, he sacked, he sacked, he sacked, he employed, he sacked, he sacked, he sacked. And we just sat there going, oh my good Lord. Now, I watch TikTok and I watch Rachel Madden, I watch John Oliver, I watch, oh God, who recently got canned and then came back?
Stephen Colbert.
Yeah,
Oh, Jimmy
that's it.
Kimmel.
That's it. Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel
And
came back. Stephen Colbert's now doing other media.
yeah, I am making a sweeping assumption. I know John Oliver does it with tongue in cheek. He's quite sarcastic about it. But Rachel Madden, I look at her and go, I think you're being truthful. I'm very surprised that you're saying what you're saying because you're making yourself a target. But the way that she delivers it, I believe her. And I just sit there sometimes and go, I don't know where this is going. And there's a part of me that so badly wants Americans to rise up against Trump, to vote him out of office. To I don't know who the right person is to put in office, right? But I'm absolutely convinced, and has been convinced for a long time. My husband's been convinced that Melania is actually Trump's handler. He's absolutely convinced.
No, sorry. He has handlers, but it's not her. They barely speak to each other. They have the most hostile marriage of any public figure I could name. She doesn't, half the time, she doesn't even go to Washington. She stays in New York with the youngest kid,
Wow.
who is now, I think, 18 or something like that. But no, I don't buy that one. So, but and in fact, his handlers are not able to control him. He does these midnight sprees of spouting nonsense for 3 hours at a time. He scares people, even the people who work for him. And he's so unlikable. And this is, to me, I don't hate him. I pity him. To me, this is what happens when you grow up without love.
Yeah.
He had nobody loving him, so he doesn't love anybody back. And I mean, I'm still in a marriage with somebody that I met in 1978. And he's older than me. Yeah, he had a start, but he's gone through 3 wives who hate him, and and God knows how many girlfriends, and he can't love, and therefore nobody wants to stick around with him. So I don't believe that Melania is his handler. I do believe that she's just as much of an opportunist as he is, and clearly did not marry him for his love, but for his large pockets.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that in spite of all the immigrant hatred he stirs up, 2 of his 3 were not born in the U.S.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, only Marla was. Ivana was from somewhere in Eastern Europe, and Melania is from Slovenia. And came under rather dubious circumstances, in fact, to the United States. Yeah.
What price? I think we could probably talk for hours about him, and I don't think we really want to.
I will say this for you UK listeners: there is resistance. There's lots of resistance. It takes many forms. We have had 7 and 8 million people in the streets on the same day, twice for these No Kings events. We have also, behind the scenes, there are young people working in groups like Extinction Rebellion and Sunrise Movement who do not get press. There is a lot of stuff going on in the halls of power, through nonprofits, through the progressives who are elected in government. It is not a monolith, and in fact, it's a deeply divided country. And both times he won by very tiny margins in certain key states. And he did actually somehow manage to squeak out the popular vote this last time, but it was in an election where half of the people who could have voted for a president didn't vote for either one.
Yeah, this apathy thing is the other thing that worries me. I mean, you talked about how many people turned out when you were trying to protect the mountain. And the thought that went through my head then was, I wonder if that was in today's society. I wonder how many would show.
Well, I
Because
think the real question there is how much would the media have covered us? Because the media doesn't cover activism in the way it did, and therefore people don't know that they're as supported as there are. There's a newsletter by a guy named Robert Hubble that I read every morning, and I'm not a huge fan of his writing, and he's kind of snarky, and he uses the same cliches over and over again. But number one, he reports on what's going on in the government in a fairly factual way. He's not Maddow. Maddow has an interesting history, by the way. She got her start in journalism in my town.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then she did local news on a local radio station. And like I saw her MC the Pride March here one year. And she still, on the weekends, she lives 30 miles out in the other direction from the big town of Northampton that has 30,000 people. And I live 5 miles east and she's 30 miles west, and with her wife. And she then went to Air America, which was an attempt to do essentially Rush Limbaugh for the left. And they had people like Tom Hartman. And then she was hired from there by MSNBC for what she does now. So they hired her knowing what they were going to get. And she's a good researcher and she has a good research team. And her stuff, it's very rare to catch her in a factual error. Happens once, twice a year, I say. Anyway, where was I going with this before I started talking?
We were talking about media and how the media don't cover you.
So it's very hard to get press coverage now. I mean, I made a lot of my living over the years writing press releases. I invented what I call the story behind the story press release, which the normal press release follows a formula called 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, all of them in the first paragraph. My press releases look for the human interest, and the who, what, where, and why filter in over time. So like I did a book for electronic privacy. I wrote a press release for that book's release. And this is back in like 1999. If I were writing it today, I would absolutely have focused it on identity theft. But back then, I focused it on intrusive anti-privacy stuff. So my headline was not electronic privacy expert releases new book. Oh, no. My headline was, and it was based on a public service announcement that ran for many years in the 60s and 70s, and I think into the 80s. It was, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? And my headline was, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your credit history is? And then the lead talked about how it might be, quote unquote, vacationing in the data banks of big corporations. And it went on from there. The book showed up in paragraph 3.
Wow.
Whole different way to write a press release.
But you just have to get the right hook, don't you? The right hook to get people interested.
And I don't know why, for some reason, it's really hard. The hooks that used to work are not working, and I haven't figured out what the new ones are. But still out there doing it. Anybody needs a creative press release, come see me. And I have fun with them too. And I had somebody look at in one of my books, I have a whole chapter on press releases, and I pulled several that I had written as examples. He flips through them and says, "These aren't press releases. They're too much fun to read." Well, just change your definition of what a press release is, because my definition is
absolutely. If obviously you needed to be seen, so you did something different, and that's Is that basically?
Now, we really only had one local newspaper that was supporting us. The other local newspaper gave us occasional coverage, but the hometown newspaper, the one based in Northampton, Massachusetts, one town over from where I live and where that development was going to be, we had 70 articles in there. We had, I don't know how many dozen letters to the editor, including my daughter got her entire 6th grade class to write letters, and they published about half of them, including hers. And she's now 38 and a mom and living 2 towns over from me on the other side of Northampton. And we're there a lot. Both of my kids are activists, and I'm very proud of them. My younger one is involved in a lot of genderqueer stuff in the Boston area and Palestine support work. And Boston's about 100 miles, 160 km from here. And so we raised them right. And
brilliant.
And as I said, my younger one, when we were doing Save the Mountain, they organized a campaign of going to local stores and asking them to donate prizes for a children's raffle. They weren't very good at executing, but they got the thing going at age 6. So when I say I know 2 people who were activists at age 6, one of them is my own kid.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, Shel, I think I could go on and I could chat to you forever, but I've got another appointment and I think probably you have too. So
Well, I do want to
thanks.
make an offer that again, not only can you get your own copy of the PDF for free of Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World, but if you tell me that you were on Sam's interview, I will give you half an hour of consulting time. And that is usually enough to kind of help you figure out a direction for what you might want to do that combines profitability with at least one of those good, huge social issues, environmental issues. And also a reminder that if anybody is connected to a grassroots or nonprofit organization that might want to get a few pence from every copy of this book sold and has an audience to bring, let's talk.
That's great. That's a really fantastic offer. And thank you, Shel. There'll be an end screen coming up in a minute that's got Shel's contact details on if you haven't already grabbed it throughout the podcast. Shel, we'll have to do it again. Maybe we'll talk about other things next time. That'd be absolutely fantastic. So for now, this is The World According to Sam Marshall checking out. Shel, I'll see you Monday morning. And for everybody else, bye-bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.